And, you know, I'm not speaking for all Canadians here, because I'm sure there's lots of Canadians that have very different answers and very strong answers. But one of the problems in Canada is that there isn't really a cohesive national identity. And that's, you know, I studied political science back in the day, and that's a big thing you study in high school and university is like, what is the Canadian identity? And we don't really have one. And our solution to that is kind of two things, and neither of them are very effective. One is the cultural mosaic, right? You guys have the cultural melting pot, right? You come here, you become American. In Canada, we have the cultural mosaic, which is like you come here and you keep your culture. And so it doesn't really matter who you ask, you're going to get a different answer. There isn't one answer. Maybe the closest thing is like we all support Team Canada hockey during the Olympics. Yeah. That's like as close as it gets. Yeah.
Let's go. Welcome to Citizen. We got a special guest today, Matt Enns, and your company is called Sovereign Man. And I just found out you're Canadian, maybe.
Correct.
How's that going?
It's better being here.
Where in Canada are you guys from?
Grew up in Ottawa, and then Whitney's from West Coast. I went to school in the West Coast, so I kind of split my time between Ottawa and Vancouver.
You know, sorry, I guess. I mean, it used to be Vancouver used to be dope back in the day. It's kind of a
Vancouver was an amazing
American cities now. They're all fucked up too.
Yeah. Yeah, in Vancouver, we were out of there before it really took a turn for the worse. But even when we were there, it was slipping for sure.
That sucks.
Yeah, the whole of Canada's in a rough spot, and worse than when we got out for sure.
Why do you think it's in a rough spot?
There's a lot of reasons, right? There's a lot we could talk about politically, obviously, and I was involved in politics in Canada back in the day. But I hate to say it, but the real reason is the people of Canada. They're too easily propagandized. They're pretty passive. And they don't seem to have a line where they stand up and say, fuck off. So things just keep getting worse and keep getting worse. And there's kind of this apathy where people don't seem to care that much. And if they do care, because they were caring for a while when things got bad, but then all Trudeau had to do is say, hey, Orange Man bad. And everyone's like, okay, we agree. And then the polls, which, you know, the Conservatives were leading like crazy, and then they just like tighten right up. You know, it took 6 weeks to turn Canada against itself, basically. So yeah, it's really disappointing to see. And there's a lot of people moving out right now, which, you know, breaks my heart a little bit, but at the same time, you know, it is what it is.
So you guys have a charter of rights instead of what we have, which is a constitution. That's the basis for all of our laws. And it, I think it's probably bizarre for people in the U.S. to think about this, but it was written in 1982, or it's passed in 1982, right? Yeah. Which is not that long ago. That's 43 years ago, right? We think of Western countries as having been around for a very long time. Aside from, I guess, some of the ex-Soviet states, most of them have been around for hundreds of years, and Canada included to some degree, I guess. Even though it's, I guess, operated as kind of a commonwealth for a long time before that, but now it's become, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, because I do think there is still some of that pioneer spirit in Canada,
yeah, there
right?
is.
Like especially in like the north and places like Alberta, especially, but like how that's going to flow down to other people in the other provinces, I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, there is still like really strong Canadian pride and a strong Canadian spirit, but it's mostly in the rural areas, and on a political level, the votes just aren't there. And most of the major cities, there's been a ton of immigration, and, you know, and fair enough, like most immigrants are going to vote for who brought them in, right? And so those Canadians who do have maybe a stronger defense of what Canada stands for on a values level, there just aren't that many of them. And you're kind of a voice crying alone in the wilderness if you're standing up for that sort of thing. There's still, you know, there's pockets in Alberta. You know, Pierre Poilievre was doing really well on a national level, and I'm friends with him, friends with Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta. Amazing
yeah, she's
woman.
Cool too.
She's the best.
She was the only Premier, I think, to come out against all the lockdown and COVID bullshit.
Yeah, she was the first Premier to apologize for mandated vaccinations. And that wasn't under her. She was after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many people in Canada that are fighting the good fight. I just don't know if they can hit critical mass.
Well, what do you think? Like, if you ask, we've actually done experiments about this. We have a show called Street Gonzo, and it's kind of it's gonzo journalism, so it's fucking crazy nonsense, right? But it's also there's a tinge of truth to everything that happens, and we send the guy around to cities all over the country. It's like, what does America mean to you is one of the questions that always comes up, and everybody always says freedom, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's a different way that they might articulate it, I guess, like the freedom to do what exactly. That's the part that might be different. But that's the standard answer here. What would you say that Canada stands for? Like, if you ask somebody who grew up in Ottawa and Toronto or something, right, versus somebody that grew up, Ottawa or Toronto on the East Coast and Vancouver on the West Coast versus somebody in Saskatchewan or Alberta, would they have the same answer, or would it be wildly disparate?
Well, I don't know if either. There really isn't much of an answer. And, I'm not speaking for all Canadians here, because I'm sure there's lots of Canadians that have very different answers and very strong answers. But one of the problems in Canada is that there isn't really a cohesive national identity. And that's, I studied political science back in the day, and that's a big thing you study in high school and university is like, what is the Canadian identity? And we don't really have one. And our solution to that is kind of two things, and neither of them are very effective. One is the cultural mosaic, right? You guys have the cultural melting pot, right? You come here, you become American. In Canada, we have the cultural mosaic, which is like you come here and you keep your culture. And so it doesn't really matter who you ask, you're going to get a different answer. There isn't one answer. Maybe the closest thing is like we all support Team Canada hockey during the Olympics. Yeah. That's like as close as it gets.
Yeah. That was a good game, by the way. 2 good games.
Actually. Yeah. So then the other answer is, like there really isn't much of an identity. So getting people to actually say this is what Canada is, you don't really have that. And so, and the funny thing about Canada too is people don't really identify with their province. Like, when you're in Texas, like you are a Texan.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. There's a bit of that in Alberta, a bit of that in Saskatchewan, but you don't really have that. It's like your identity is kind of independent of the country almost. And so you don't get this kind of unifying idea that Canada stands for freedom or Canada stands for this. Oh no, sorry. The second one, this is what I meant to say. The second piece of the identity is, and this is unfortunate, it's like we are not American. And it's kind of like little brother syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And so you saw a lot of that playing out the last couple months because the Conservatives were leading the polls by like 40 points or something, something historically that's never happened before, totally insane. And when Trump threatened the tariffs, Trudeau was basically like, well, I can tank the Canadian economy, but I can get everybody to rally behind me if we attack Trump, we attack the States. And that seems to be another thing in addition to Team Canada hockey that Canadians will rally around. It's like, we are not American.
That's a pretty low bar for a national identity.
It's horrible. Yeah. And this is like, this is not just me and my bias. Like this, you ask,
hardcore. You can track the poll numbers, like as you said, over the last 3 or 4 months. Yeah, it's wildly upside down at this point. First of all, let's address a few things, and I don't want to drag you into any of my nonsense, but
no, let's do it.
Multiculturalism is stupid, right?
It's not functional.
It's like this isn't a moralistic issue. You can look at societies that are more homogenous and they're safer. That's just how it is. And it isn't because one race, ethnicity, or anything like that is more dangerous than the other. It's when you fucking mix cultures, not people. The race and nationality, none of that shit matters. Culture is what matters. I have a lot of former Afghan Special Forces people that are friends of mine that live here in the U.S. and they're American, right? Mm-hmm. They don't give a fuck about Afghanistan, and why would they? Because that place is horrible to them. But there's something about multiculturalism that tears at the belly of cohesion, I guess, right? It's the levers of pride and shame only exist if people align themselves collectively to something greater than themselves.
100%.
That's the only way that it actually works, right? So I'm proud enough that I want everything to look nice and function well, and I would feel some measure of shame if they weren't doing that. Those are the two levers that kind of drag people in to action that supports things greater than themselves. And if you don't have some and America's going through it too, right? Like if you ask people that I graduated high school with what does it mean to be an American, they would have an answer to that question, a very specific one. Yeah. And I would say 80% of them would say really close to the same thing, even adjusted for geography. Today, I don't think so. I think if you ask, maybe now, because the younger kids are starting to come back. But if you ask like a 25-year-old that just like lives in Austin, I don't think they would have an answer to that question. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but even still, the States has a bit of an advantage where if people aren't like, well, USA stands for freedom, it's still a reaction against that. Like there's, their other belief is still a reaction against the core identity that everyone kind of knows is what America is. Yeah. And yeah, we definitely don't have that in Canada.
Which is an interesting thing because it's the presumption is that it should be for freedom. Maybe you don't think it is right now, right? But that's the other answer somebody would give. It's either for freedom or it's pretending to be.
Yeah.
Which the assumption you can make from that is that it should be, right?
Yeah, and to your point about values, like my primary job, my career is helping men prevent divorce, right? So we, to use a marriage analogy, you can have so many problems in your marriage, but if you guys don't share the same values, it's really, really hard to make it work, right? Because you don't actually want the same things. You're not pointed in the same direction. And so you can kind of be these two partners who have something, kind of functional in terms of kids or finances. But if you actually want to if you want to get somewhere in your marriage, you have to agree on where you're going. And the same thing is true for, a household, a neighborhood, a municipality, a county, right? A country. If you've got all of these competing visions of where it's supposed to go, it's like naturally you'll become a little bit oppositional. Or best case scenario, you'll just kind of ignore each other. And another problem with multiculturalism is that it's not actually like you keep your culture, because that's not what happens in Canada. They'll keep their culture for a generation or something. You kind of just end up having no culture, right? And it's like when you visit, small town Spain, it's very, very Spanish. But if you visit Madrid, it's the same as visiting Tokyo or New York. It's just this kind of gray, neutral, global default mode. There's nothing unique left. And so that's a lot of what's happened in Canada, is that you lose all the special things about the cultures that they came from, but you don't create anything new as this unified group that's something you can rally around. So you kind of just get this spiritless neutrality. And it's very much not functional on a political level.
Yeah, that's retarded.
That's one way of putting it. Yeah.
I mean, it's so obvious all the reasons why that wouldn't be effective.
Yeah. And we have data now too. Like we know it's not effective.
So, maybe I know that Trump's position is that the U.S. and the U.S. economy specifically have been taken advantage of for a very long time. Not just by Canada, which is true to some degree, but certainly by Europe, more so than Canada. Even though Canada is one of our biggest trade partners, but we assumed that we were purchasing certain things with those trade partnerships. That is to say, look out for that northern border. And as it turns out, something like 70% of the terrorist suspects that get encountered at borders are at the north border, not the southern border, right?
Oh, I had no idea.
Because it's easier to get at. I mean, that most of the 9/11 hijackers came in through the
that I didn't know.
Right?
Yeah.
So, which is what I think tariffs is a threat, is what Trump said he was going to do before. So it makes sense to do that. I don't think they're ever going to. I don't think that'll be a persistent thing, because we're also getting the United States is the more powerful country, so things are going to fall to their side if we negotiate correctly. That's how life works, right?
Yeah.
But you guys extract a lot of tar sand oil. You only have the ability to refine about 20% of it, and you give it to us at a discount. That's a good deal for us. That's a good deal for you, right? There's plenty of synergy there. And on the military front, nobody is ever going to invade Canada because they know that we would wipe their entire country off the map. That's a good deal for both places as well, because you don't have to worry about it, and we have security, right? As a continent, I guess, if Mexico would participate, although they're starting to participate now. So I really don't think that these tariff things are going to persist into the future, and I'm not sure if I mean, Trudeau is a clever guy, right? I mean, he's a communist, so he's
smarter than people give him credit for.
He's not a dipshit. He's a clever guy. He's definitely leveraged this to his advantage. And I think maybe the U.S. is going to have to readjust their policy to some degree. Like, you have to give, in a negotiation like that, you have to give somebody a graceful out from the conflict, right? They have, the Canadian people need to feel like they've won something as well. It can't just be one-sided. And if we want Pierre to be in charge, and from an American standpoint, that's the only guy I see that has any competence. Forget about his particular political positions. He's just a normal human being with a reasonable brain, not like Jagmeet, fuckface, or any of these people. They're all retarded, man. They're just they're still bought into all this stuff. everybody knows that none of it's true anymore. And they're on this, I don't know if it's spent cost fallacy or if they feel fear that if they go back now, the people will realize they're all frauds, which I think everybody kind of recognizes that already.
Yeah, not in Canada.
Really? I mean, how I don't understand that. How can, like, here in the U.S., nobody trusts politicians or the media anymore.
Yeah. Well, we do have, you know, if there is a bit of an identity in Canada, it's kind of like we're kind, we're nice, right? And I have my own opinion on that. But there is this idea that if you do the nice thing, it seems to be kind of irrelevant whether or not it works. And that's part of the problem with like the tariff negotiations is it seems to be the case that Trudeau, the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford,
we miss Rob.
Yeah, Rob was at least fun, right?
Yeah,
Rob was fun.
Smoking crack and going crazy.
Yeah, Rob was a party, talking about eating pussy in meetings with reporters. Yeah, he was a wild man. But right now they seem like they're willing to. They're like, okay, if we go anti-America with our rhetoric, we're going to get support. And yeah, you know, Ontario is not going to win a fight against the USA. Canada's not going to win an economic fight against the USA. And it seems that they're willing to further tank the economy. Because it works politically, which is again, it's a horrible statement about where Canada's at psychologically, but it seems to be really, really crazy effective in the polls to do this anti-America thing. And if it ruins the country, I'm not that sure that Trudeau cares. If it's good for his party, if it's good for his power, it's like, hey, let's do it. And that leads me back to disappointment in the Canadian people. Like, can't you see through this by now? Like, it's been 10 years.
What do you think? I mean, look, typically in these situations, it's good leadership that's missing, right? And to be fair, we're in a time of great tumult, generally speaking, but Canada especially, I think, even more so than the United States, because at least people are aware of what's happening here. Pierre's got to fucking do something here, right?
Yeah.
He has to find a wedge to get in there and make the position that it's not like this antagonism towards America might make you feel good day to day. And yeah, we're going to fight for Canada, but this trying to make this an antagonistic relationship with the most powerful country in the world is stupid.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. Like,
it's so insane.
Just wait 4 years until Trump's gone. You're going to have more fucked up years.
Yeah.
That's not a plan.
Yeah, and that's like, I don't think there's anything brave about picking a fight that you can't win, right? That's not actually what bravery is. And Pierre is, you know, he's a million miles better than Trudeau, that's for sure. But I think it remains to see if he has the moral courage to say things that Canadians might not like. Like, that's one thing about Trump, love him or hate him. He's going to say things that even his own people don't like.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit.
He doesn't give a shit, right? And I find that really trustworthy in somebody when somebody's just saying things when they know it's okay. And Pierre does, and you know, maybe it's a brilliant political move, maybe it's necessary in Canada, but he kind of waits until the crowd is on his side before he takes a stand. And I don't know if he has the moral courage necessary to actually make changes, because the pattern in Canada is the same as it was in the States prior to the last few years or the last few weeks. You know, the small government quote party gets in, and really all that means is the government grows a little bit more slowly. Yeah. But it's all the same shit, right? They're like, what I call them in Canada is like, they're liberal approved conservatives, right? Or Democrat approved Republicans, rhinos, right? And Pierre's got the right policy ideas, but even right now, it's like he's not actually taking a stand and saying, hey, look, don't boo America. And like, we're not going to do that, right? Like, they're our friends. We exist peacefully because of them. Like, let's maybe show some gratitude. And he's been more kind of neutral, let's say, but I think someone needs to come along and be like, yo, Canadians, wake up. We're not doing this. And I don't know if he has that leadership quality in him. We'll see. Hopefully
is there anybody else in your guys' pipeline? I mean, to be honest, because Harper was, he had some early success, but I think the massive media operation against Trump fucked him up. Like, once people started going after Trump, the second stage of that plan was to align any world leader they didn't like with him. Viktor Orban, fucking Stephen Harper, all these people, right? And it just kind of, a lot of people got flushed down the drain because of it, whether they deserved it or not. Yeah.
Harper was gone by the time Trump came along.
Yeah, it was like 2015, right?
Yeah, 2014, 2015, yeah. But it was still caught up in that same thing. Yeah, and the media was completely again, and we have state-funded media in Canada, right? So And it's probably USAID funded too.
Yeah,
we'll find out.
Yeah. Well, what is it, CBC? They're definitely.
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I figured. Yeah. And that's actually going to be a really interesting one because, you know, you're mentioning why aren't people waking up? And I think part of the reason is, it's just on a purely psychological level, it's really hard to admit you're wrong. Right. And if you've been wrong in a way that alienated family members, that caused your kids to not be able to buy homes, that is, you know, very black and white wrong. You can admit that, and that's the right thing to do, obviously, but it's very psychologically destabilizing. So people will chase these absurd lies for a really long time before they'll actually look in the mirror and say, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm not good at choosing which experts to listen to. Maybe I don't have as good a judgment. Maybe I'm not that good at research. Maybe I'm full of shit and I have been for a long time and I didn't know it. And that's so destabilizing. And so I think as this USAID stuff comes out and we start realizing that so much of what we believe is literally pure propaganda, and there's like a multi-billion-dollar global network that's been feeding us the same narrative for a long time, you would think people's response to that would be, oh crap, I've been tricked. I want some revenge now. But I think it's going to surprise us that a lot of people's response is going to be, well, that was necessary and good and we should keep doing it. Because otherwise they have to admit they're not as smart as they thought they were. They don't have as good judgment. They made bad decisions that affect their kids, that affect themselves. And, you know, I do a lot of psychological work with my clients, obviously. And admissions on that scale are very, very psychologically destabilizing. So I think we're going to see a lot of people double down and just say, hey, we should go back to that, which is sad, but I do think that's probably where we're headed.
I wonder if there isn't some parallel for, I guess, social discourse, political propaganda, whatever you want to call it, and Kubler-Ross. Like, are we in the denial phase right now, and then we're going to anger next, right? And it happens in segments and cohorts as well, right? Like you see, and I think a lot of it is leadership based. You'll see individuals have their road to Damascus moment, right, where they wake up like, oh, I was fucked up this whole time and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it's noble and sometimes it's a grift. It's hard to tell. But typically they'll draw some amount of their followers, if you want to call them that, through that period. But it definitely seems like the first reaction is denial. And this isn't true just of people on the left, by the way. You know, you guys are Canadian, so this may not mean anything to you, but Trump did some stuff with guns that we all thought was bad, banning bump stocks, supporting red flag laws and shit like that, and that shit got shut down by his own people. And now, even now with this second iteration of Trump, which is what we voted for the first time, right? When he missteps, like saying that we're going to go occupy Gaza or something, we're like, no, we're not doing that, right? So I think that a great deal of the Trump side has kind of gotten over it, but there's still quite a bit of nut swinging, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, but I think, you know, even with the Epstein thing a couple of days ago, like the right is more likely to call out, hey, this is not okay. This is not what we voted for. And I think part of that is because the right is the party of individuals. And there's everything from libertarians to social conservatives and evangelicals and everything in between, right? And on the left, it's much more unified.
Most of the center left people too.
Yeah.
Like the political right in America is center left all the way to like anarcho-capitalists now, that whole segment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be tough for them to compete in federal elections now because of that, to be honest. The left, I mean.
Yeah. And that's the great downfall of the right across the West globally is they can't really unite, right? And especially, you know, libertarians are the worst for this, and I'm pretty libertarian, but
same, yeah. It's like what's the old joke? It's an antisocial social group and nobody shows up to the meetings.
Yeah, exactly. And libertarians are such policy purists that they can't agree on everything ever. And if somebody comes along and they're 98.9% libertarian, but they're 1% not, it's like the libertarian community will spend all their time attacking that person. It's like, hey, this is the first guy you've got in 30 years. Like, give him a break on that 1%. He's way better than the next guy, but they can't do it. So that's a problem. But I do think as far as people waking up right now, the good thing is when somebody wakes up, they don't go back to sleep. Right. And a lot of them wake up with a bit of revenge in their hearts. Like, okay, like that's not happening again. I'm not going with this again. So every crisis we go through, the people that are willing to fight back and say, hey, no, like I'm a sovereign citizen. This is not okay. You don't get to make these decisions for me. You don't get to lie to me and then have me smile and shake your hand and say thank you. Yeah. Like that group of people is growing every single day. But will it hit critical mass in time? we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, these things, this might just be part of nature in the same way that leaves fall off of the ground and refertilize the tree again. Who knows, right? I mean, we do seem to go through the same several hundred-year cycle politically in the West, at least. Yeah, I agree. I think right now is a time for a lot of reflection, but also a lot of leadership from men, especially because right now, one of the fastest growing cohorts of men in the political sphere, they call themselves the manosphere or Sigma males. They're not Sigma. I say this a lot. Sigma males are, it's the man in the arena. It's the guy standing up while everybody else is on their knees, right? The man who's doing the right thing and he doesn't give a fuck what anybody else thinks. That's a Sigma male, not somebody who hates women.
Yeah.
Right. And that's all they're just not, so I was talking to Ian Carroll about this the other day. We're at the precipice now, and right now we're in the period of deciding whether we're going to produce a generation of nihilists or a generation of people that continue to be propagandized, right? Which is going to destroy your mind. When you know it's happening and you allow it to happen after the fact, it literally destroys your ability to reason. Or people that are going to stand the fuck up and realize what their power is. You mentioned it before, that Canadians don't have a line where they stand up and just say fuck off, although Ricky from Trailer Park Boys had no problem with it. But the power to say no collectively is the most important and powerful political power that people will ever have, right? And just like, I mean, I don't know if you tracked on this, but in the U.S., in mid-2022, these idiots tried to stand up something called the Disinformation Governance Board, which is online thought police, and make it a separate agency inside of the Department of Homeland Security. And everybody, to include the left, to be fair, we're like, nah, we're not doing that. That's fucking crazy. You can't do that. Everybody just said no, and it went away. That woman got fired. She now works for the British government doing the exact same thing. That's why people are getting arrested over there. So she outsourced that. But that's the power, right, of people collectively. It's not to people think about collective political power like, oh, we're going to go get this bill passed or get this law passed. No, from an individualist standpoint, you should be you're the bulwark against stupid government fucking bullshit, right? That's your job as a citizen, is to be informed and know enough to say no when no is appropriate. But you got to know enough, right? So part of that is active participation in the process, which a lot of people have a problem with. It's like, I understand that you got a busy life, but if your attitude is that this doesn't affect me, so I don't need to pay attention to it, and you still believe that in 2025, you got some serious fucking problems.
Yeah, and that is a really, like, that apathy is a really common attitude everywhere, right? It's like, well, you know, or not even apathy. It's like this kind of like being proud of being a non-participant. It's like, oh, I'm above that. I don't get distracted by politics. It's like, well, politics is distracted by you, whether you're paying attention or not. And yeah, kind of tying that back into the manosphere, what you're talking about. It's kind of the same idea. It's like, well, politics is shitty, so I'm going to quit. Well, women are shitty, so I'm going to quit. Yeah. Right? It's like, well, you actually have some control over how shitty women are. You have some control over how shitty politics are. And if you want to just be bitter and alone and sit in your basement complaining that everything is worse than it should be, and you're doing nothing to improve it, it's like, that's on you, dude. And with the kind of work that Whitney and I do, we get a lot. I call them the bitter men brigade, right? You call them black pill, MGTOW, men going their own way, incels. They are so certain that they are not the problem and that all women are the problem. It's like, that's, you know, hey, it feels good to be a victim. It feels good to say, hey, I'm above this. I know better. But it takes away all your power, because if there's nothing you can do to change the situation, that means you're weak. That means you're passive. That means you're helpless.
Yeah. And by the way, that's why I think AA is bullshit.
Okay.
Like you have to admit that you're powerless against your addiction. Like, no, that's fuck.
I have probably similar thoughts. I have a lot of people that I know that are in AA and it works really well for them and good. But I have trouble with the idea that 30 years sober, you should consider yourself an addict. You don't have to think that you're an addict anymore. Like I don't drink anymore. I used to I got drunk to the, you know, not just a little bit drunk, very drunk every day for 15 years. And I mean, every day. There were years I didn't take one day off, sick or not, fever or not. And I am not an addict. I don't drink anymore. I'll have a sip here and there, you know, if a drink looks interesting. But I don't drink, but that's because my identity shifted from I am an addict, I am not an addict. Yeah. And that raw willpower, it's good, you know, but my experience with willpower is that it fails sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was relying on willpower not to drink, I'd probably be drinking.
What else do you rely on?
Instead of willpower?
Yeah. Or in addition to it, I guess.
I rely on a deep knowledge that I don't need that. Like I know I don't need that. And what I did to overcome addiction was I looked at alcoholism not as a disease, but as a medicine. And I was like, well, what's the wound that alcohol is helping me address? And when I healed that wound, I didn't need the medicine anymore.
Yeah. That's the only approach that works. Because if your relationship with any substance, and I'm talking about everything from alcohol and drugs to food, pornography, your work ethic, even if your relationship with that is, and all of these things are fine on their own, right? Do what the fuck you want. This is, and I say this a lot. Dude, you guys are Canadian, but you're in America now. This is America. Do what the fuck you want, dude. But don't blame the thing for your fucking behavior, right? You're in control of this stuff. It's the only way to do it. Because if your relationship with it is as such that you cannot even be around it, right? You are still affected by it. You've not addressed the problem yet.
It's still more powerful than you.
Yeah. That should be unacceptable to a man, especially, right? And then you map that onto this this depolarization of male-female relationships that's happened over the past, let's say, 40, 50 years now. And it's very obvious. I mean, I have no time for people who say, well, the system is broken, or all women are like this. I mean, the platitude itself, the generalization bothers me, but not so much as the attitude, where you're a fucking man. You're the one that's supposed to be leading this. And a lot of these guys are on the religious right as well, which is even more deeply troubling, because literally everything that you believe in says that you're the one that's supposed to take responsibility and lead the situation. Yet your response to all this was to take your ball and go home like a fucking child. You know what I mean? I just have not to say that these people shouldn't be reached out to and pulled back into reality, which is what needs to happen. But if that's somebody's general attitude, I straight up tell them, like, you're fucked up. Like you haven't even addressed the base level problem yet, because you're still thinking like that. Until you do, there's nobody that can help you.
Yeah, 100%. And if whatever, you coach a hockey team, and after 15 hockey teams, you're like, I've only had the wrong team. Nobody ever listens to me. It's like, well, that's a problem with you as a coach, dude. That's not a problem with all of the hockey teams. And the same thing applies to relationship. And I can't tell you the number of relationships of the guys that I've worked with where, and this is honestly half of them, they start out, they're like, yeah, this makes sense, but my wife is different. She's not like that. And funny little anecdote, I have a client, or I had a client early last year, and his wife, PhD in feminism, like couldn't have a conversation about anything with her. And he was like, these are good ideas, but it's not going to work for her. And when he started showing up differently as a man, he changed his energy, less needy, not making all these demands of her all the time for what she needs to do for him to be happy. He just started doing shit that needed to get done and started showing up the way he needed to show up. We got on a call one day and he goes, I got to tell you something. He goes, for the first time ever in 17 years of marriage, my wife made me dinner last night. And he goes, I didn't ask her to. I was sitting there watching TV and she brought me dinner. And he goes, and before I was finished eating, she brought me a second meal because she was worried I didn't like the first one enough. Right? This is a feminist professor. Right? And so men need to understand, and this is the problem with, the Bitter Men Brigade. It's like, you have way more power than you think you do. And if you show up in a certain way, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to realize, hey, this person is not giving me what I need. Yeah. And she's not the right one. Or there's a very good chance she's going to go, oh, these are the new rules of the game. Well, I actually respect you. I feel safer in this environment. You're the kind of man I actually want to be. I actually want to be with. Okay, these rules make sense. They work for me. Let's play by these rules from now on.
I don't understand why men don't understand this, because the analog to that situation is me not giving a fuck what our bed looks like. I don't care how many goddamn pillows are on there. I don't care what color it is. Here's what I care about. Is it going to be there tonight when I go to sleep in it? I don't care if we even make the fucking thing. Now, I'll help you make the bed because you want it to look nice. I don't know who's giving grand tours of our fucking bedroom. Yeah. I thought we were the only people in there. But you as a man don't care about that. There's a very good chance that for the majority of your household, you don't care what any of that shit looks like either, right? Maybe you have a man cave or something.
My office.
The living room, I don't fucking, just like, okay, there's some fucking plastic horses
Yeah.
And
we need to make the couch go from light gray to white.
Yeah, I just don't care. Don't bother me with that shit. So that's a very common thing that any man that's ever been in a relationship or just grown up with a mom knows. You know that to be true, that women have some proclivity towards that and you don't give a fuck about it. Now, why would you not immediately understand that the inverse of that is also true, right? And then when you, like, imagine the household that you would live in when you come home, and this is more of a traditional look, but you come home, you have a stay-at-home wife, just for the sake of this argument, and you come home from work, and the house is all fucked up, right? And it just, on a daily basis, doesn't look good. She's not decorated or whatever, right? Which is what you've counted on her to do. How does that make you feel? And then imagine how she feels when you don't listen to her or touch her or do all the stuff that men are supposed to do all day long, every day, not just when you want to fuck her. You know what I mean? It's like, well, imagine what kind of, again, you're the leader. What kind of conditions are you setting with your behavior right now? I think that's something that people should really start thinking about, not just men, but definitely men.
100%. And men have so much more power than they think they do. To set that tone and say, hey, look, the rules of this relationship are I take your needs really seriously and I do what I can to make sure you've got your needs fulfilled and you do the same for me. And a lot of men seem to think that they're just going to find some woman who just wants to do everything for them all the time. Right? And these are a lot of the guys who, like, they'll go to Lithuania or something to try to find a wife. And
like, why are you trying to, that part is fucking retarded. It's like, I mean, and I don't mean, your wife's in the room right now, so I'm not trying to compare women to horses or anything. Yeah. But if you're trying to find a high
She's
quality,
not easily offended. Don't worry. She lives with me.
If you're trying to find a high quality horse, you don't go to the wildlands of Colorado and find a Mustang and try to break it, right? That's not what you do. No, you find something that's close to you that's already in the same, I guess, cultural headspace, and then just lead it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, why would you go? That mail order shit is so wild because I know the thinking behind it. It's like, oh, these are more traditional people. They're going to do this or that. It's like that person doesn't share your culture. So how the fuck are you going to get along with them for 50 years?
It's going to be a challenge. And you know what? Like, there is something to that. There are cultures around the world where they still have male and female roles, and that's functional. And it is going to be easier in that regard. But I've also had clients where they went that route, and 5 years later, with the tone they're setting in the relationship, everything's still a mess.
Yeah.
Right? She's realized, I can kind of get away with treating him this way and doing these things, and he doesn't really give me what I need anyway. Like, you're going to run into the same problems. It just might take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Right? And she might be a little bit younger and hotter than you'd be able to get here. So I guess great for you. Hurrah. Yeah. But that's the single greatest problem with relationships today, is that we don't know the role that men and women play in relationship anymore. We've had, feminism and all of our media and everything basically channeling at us for 50 years that men are kind of bumbling and useless and women kind of keep the family together, and men and women are legally equal. And we confuse that with being functionally the same. And so a lot of men, they don't understand what women need. They don't understand that it's different than what men need. And they kind of think that if I recognize that she has different needs than me, it's like, it's degrading to women. It's like, no, it's not. Is it degrading to you when your wife says, hey, thanks for everything you do so much, I really appreciate it, because you need respect? Do you find that degrading? It's like, no, like, we have different needs, we play different roles, and designing a relationship from scratch and trying to stay 50-50 equal and neutral, like, play that game out for 5 years and see what it does for you. See if you find that a rewarding relationship. See if there's this dynamic magnetism in your relationship where you can't wait to jump each other's bones. It's like, it's not going to happen.
No, if you're part of the 10% of society that is, I guess, sexually neutral, that might work for you.
Exactly.
That's
right.
a very small amount. And you're talking about 10% of males and 10% of females. So the idea of it's 1% chance that you'll have that kind of relationship if you were so inclined. Well, 1%, that's how math works, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, good fucking luck with that. That's not going to work. I mean, you're going to end up with neutral polarity, and nobody, I don't think, the vast majority of people don't want
and there are those people, right? There are people, like, they just kind of want to do a puzzle with their wife once a week, and, like, that's good and great for them. And if that's what you're looking for, go find that and you'll be happy. But most men, especially the men listening to this podcast, like, they're going to be either already very masculine or drawn to that and wanting to become that. And you're not going to be happy with somebody who's neutral. Like, you have to find your complementary opposite. If you're 80-20, she's got to be 20-80. Yeah. And it is a problem, because women also have this kind of internalized sense that well, if I act feminine, I'm betraying my own gender, and there's something wrong with it, and I have to go do this and do this and do this, and it is not functional. And we're going to figure it out as a society, right? Whenever you have change, like, it takes a while to kind of work out. But the thing that I recommend that men do right now is, you don't have to go back to the 1950s, and I don't think anybody, is recommending that or even wants that, but use traditional male and female roles as a model for your marriage, and then adjust it until it makes sense with you. Because, both of your individuals, you've both got your own unique blend of what excites you and what you want out of life. But don't try to design the whole thing from scratch. It's way too complex for two people to do.
Why the hell are you trying to design something from scratch that's been developed over millions of years of evolution? That is retarded.
Yeah.
And, equality at its core never meant that women should behave or be treated like men. That wasn't the point. It's that females should have the space and confidence to be as feminine as they want, to be the fullest version of themselves as they want, without judgment or oppression from men or society. That's what it really meant, right? I don't know how that got so confused, this idea that to be equal to men, we had to be men.
Well, I think what happened is feminism didn't actually teach women to be strong, empowered women. Feminine said, you can also be like a man. Right? And, just to be blunt, like, women are not as good at being men as men are, right? That's kind of an obvious thing to say. Men are not as good at being women as women are, right? And so what feminism taught women was the wrong thing. And you're seeing a lot emerging, especially in, like, the online coaching space, of women who are teaching women how to be strong, empowered women, right? And that looks different, right? That does not look like a Navy SEAL. It looks different. And the more that you kind of get that messaging in, the better that relationships are going to do, and the more we're going to recover from this. And it's really, it's up to men to kind of look at the situation and say, do I want to wait for society to change or for my wife to miraculously change? Or do I want to offer her the gift of masculine security that she needs? Because women are, like, highly, highly sensitive to threat, right? You and I kind of exist like a predator mindset. We're like, we want something, and then everything else kind of gets tuned out until we find that thing. Women exist in more of like a prey mindset. Like, they're kind of aware of all things at all time. They have diffuse awareness. We have single focus. And when you give your wife the gift of masculine security, that diffuse awareness, that, like, really elevated threat detection system just kind of calms down. And what men don't understand is, like, that's a gift to give to a woman, where you can be like, hey, I'm aware of the threats. Why don't you just rest inside of my awareness? Like, that's an unbelievable gift. And women are craving that. And it's, doesn't matter where your relationship is at. Like, I can't tell you the stories of the relationships that we've saved. If you step into that role as a man, in my experience, there's an 80% chance, and this is based on hundreds of clients we've worked with, there's an 80% chance, even if initially she's not really comfortable, she doesn't know what it is, she doesn't recognize it, maybe she's never been around a safe man before. A lot of women grew up without fathers or with unsafe fathers, but if you do that well, there's an 80% chance, even if she resists it initially, she's going to go, oh, thank God, this feels better. This is what I've always wanted.
Sure.
Her mind calms down, her nervous system calms down. And then what happens is, she'll start to want to spend more time at home. She'll start to want to hear your opinions. She won't be undermining you as much. She'll be respecting you. She'll be looking at you as, oh, you are my source of safety. I need that. Thank you. What a gift you've given me.
Yeah. We've got a big problem even defining some of these terms, right, in a way that's meaningful to people, because there's so much noise, I guess, in this conversation. And it runs the gamut politically and socially, from, I guess we've mentioned the fake ass Sigma bullshit manosphere, but also on the hard left,
Oh yeah.
From the feminist standpoint, it's all kind of, a lot of it is confusion. So I like to talk about practical shit sometimes. Because there is this notion, people think that when they think of, and look, this is just a function of having to define things, right? It's a process that needs to happen. But when people think of male female roles, they'll think of, like, work or don't work, maybe, or housework versus manual labor, or something like that, right? Or secretary versus CEO, even, right? If you go back far enough. But that doesn't really even scratch the surface of what polarity is. None of that is the point. That's all noise. Those are just functional things that happen throughout the day. That has nothing to do, like, there are, even when, like, if a man was the the lower earner, or like so a lot of my friends are authors, right? They write from home. They don't really go anywhere, and they have highly like my buddy's wife is a fucking psychiatrist, very successful one, right? And he's an author. He travels around for book tours and shit, but he's in the home probably more than she is. But he's still the man there, right? Like I don't know how we get so confused in the minutia. It's like, well, you're the one that's got to do the yard work and take out the garbage because I'm washing dishes and taking care of the kids. Like, all right, cool, maybe that day, right? Who knows? But those are completely separate things, right? This idea of male-female polarity versus the functional tasks that we do are not the same thing. And I think maybe
Correct.
just because we're dumb and lazy, we've made those the same thing, and it's just not true.
Yeah, for sure. And the one that guys get hung up on the most is like, who makes more money? And like, I'm not gonna lie, if you make more money, it is easier for you, like straight up. But there's plenty of relationships where he's very much the masculine pole, she's very much the feminine pole, and she earns 10 times as much money as him. But he's showing up in other areas, right? And really what masculinity means in that context is, are you the source of stillness in your household? Right? If she's feeling chaotic, if she's having that week out of the month, if she's overwhelmed and stressed, like what a lot of guys do when they're, she gets kind of in her masculine, she's kind of like hard and, intense and she's wanting to fight, they'll try to out masculine her. Right? And a buddy of mine has a great line. It's like, you can't out masculine a masculine woman. Only thing you can do is outstill her. Right? And can you be secure in yourself enough? Do you have enough confidence to face the female storm and not get reactive and just be still and say, hey, look, daddy's here. I can still wrap my arms around you. Everything's okay. I got this. And you can be making 10 grand a year and your wife can be making $10 million a year. And she's going to look at you as her masculine place of safety if that's what you're doing. So yeah, it really isn't about household tasks. That's just, something that our minds easily go to. But you can have any mixture. You can be at home with the kids and you can be the masculine half of the relationship very, very easily. It's what's the emotional state that you're bringing to the relationship compared to her emotional state, and can you be that source of security and safety for her, or are you relying on her as that source of emotional safety? You're dumping on her all the time. You need her to make you feel better every day, and she's not getting any of that from you. That's when it becomes a big problem.
Well, what are some practical examples of doing man shit that can calm this lunatic down? Right. Yeah. I think that's a good one. And to be fair, this isn't a new. We think of these problems as new, but this is not a new thing. Shakespeare wrote Taming of the Shrew in the 1590s, right? And it is about a woman in her masculine era, if you want to call it that, or energy or whatever. And she's a fucking wild asshole, right? And then a very masculine dude calms her the fuck down. That's the story, and it's from 1590. So none of this shit's new, right? And not just has it existed, but we've also known how to address it for 500 100%. Fucking years. Yeah. Right. This isn't rocket surgery, but somehow we seem to control, alt, delete, and memory dump every 200 years or so, and just forget everything. We forget the Stoics exist. We forget everything every 200 years. But what are some practical examples of doing man things on a day-to-day basis? I mean, Candace talks about a lot, about just the little things, being present, making contact with her, like physical contact, not just when you want to have sex with her, but like even like touching the small of the back. Hi, how you doing, honey? Whatever the fuck. Just like a bunch of little shit throughout the day is important. So what are some things that you guys focus on?
Well, here's a cheat code. And I'll tell you how men mishandle it first, right? Let's say you get home from work, or she gets home from work and she's like in a tizzy, right? Her car's not clean and the kids are this, and her, cousin's friend's daughter is in the hospital with this, and she's just like, everything is too much, right? And oftentimes what she'll do is she'll be like, why isn't the kitchen clean? And then the typical male response is to go, okay, well, I'm keeping an Excel spreadsheet of household duties in my mind, and I'm ahead of you right now. So let me tell you all the things I've done and all the things you haven't done, right? You're going to kind of out-logic her emotions, right? And we've all tried that.
Yeah, you can't.
Even if you win, you lose. Even if you win, you lose. So when you sense your wife is like, it's all too much for her, what she needs is a male protector.
Well, that's your household chore above all else. Right.
Yeah, and that's your thing. So if it is the dishes,
right?
Yeah, you can say, hey, like, like whatever, you were gone and I let the kitchen get out of control. That's on me. But what you do in that situation is say, hey, look, I can tell, and drop into your radio DJ voice a little bit. Hey, like, outstill her. Hey, I can see you're overwhelmed right now. You've got a lot going on, and just let her know that like, hey, and I know you got this, you're doing this, and this with work is happening. why don't you go to the bedroom, watch that shitty TV show that you like. I'm going to bring you a glass of wine. And I know you're worried about the kitchen right now. By the time you get out of there, the kitchen's going to be clean. Right. And a lot of guys are like, no, it should be her. She should be doing this. I already did this and I'm doing all this work and she, whatever. Okay. Play that out, see how that works for you, or try what I'm saying. Because what's going to happen is if you give her an hour and a half in the bedroom, she's going to come out of there after 45 minutes or 60 minutes, and she's going to be the wife you've wanted the whole time. She's going to come out of there, she's going to be relaxed, she's going to be rested because everything was too much for her, and she met the immovable force of the strong masculine who said, it's not too much for me, I've got this, I can see you need rest, go get rest. And if you do that, like I had a client whose wife hadn't initiated sex with him in 6 years. He did that once and she jumped his bones that night. First time in 6.5 years, right? Like that stuff really works because again, we forget that's the role that the masculine has to play for the feminine sometimes. Hey, things are too much for you. I got this.
Well, that's what
it's
I mean.
Okay.
When I say when I say that's your primary household chore as a man, it is to calm her the fuck down.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Not the dishes part.
I see what you're saying.
Forget about the list of actual or whatever you call it, division of labor or whatever I guess we would call that. No, your number one household chore is to make sure that she's feels safe and secure, right?
Yeah.
Because everything else kind of flows from that. It's like it's like having the power turned on. If that doesn't happen, then nothing else happens.
Yeah. If she comes to you and she's overwhelmed or exhausted or angry or sad or whatever it is, and you can't stay still in the face of that emotion, this is what happens. She goes, oh no, I thought this was bad. I threw it at my husband, the guy who's supposed to be my source of security, and he's reacting like it's really bad. It must be even worse than I thought.
Yeah.
And then, she goes from a 6 to a 9, right? And if she presents, whatever that storm is to you and your response is, hey, it's all good. Daddy's here. I got this. Everything's okay. Let me give you a hug. She's going to go, oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was. He seems like he can handle it. Oh, thank God I can relax a little bit. It's not all on me. He doesn't seem like it's a big deal. And then she goes from a 6 to a 3. Right. And it would be nice, I guess, if, that's where your wife was at all the time. And if you want that in a partner, like gay marriage is legal. Right? Go find that.
Yeah.
If you want to be married to a feminine woman, that's part of the deal.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
And there's plenty of again, just to share both sides. There's plenty of stupid shit that we're doing too. Like I'm going to forget a conversation we had 20 minutes ago. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not even going to try to remember it anymore because I've learned over 40 some years that I'm incapable of doing that. So I have to focus somewhere else. Right.
Yeah. I'm
not going to get good at something I suck at. I'm going to get better at something I'm good at typically. Right. And the thing that dudes have to realize is you can't take you can't take it personally when she's in that emotional state unless you want her to take it personally when you're in that forgetful out of the like whatever it is that you're doing that's pissing her off. It's a quid pro quo for sure in that situation. And you can opt out of it, do what you want, do whatever the fuck you want. But if you want to have, and if you're a masculine dude, you're going to want to have a feminine woman. That's just fucking how it is, dude. And you got to realize that the more emotional a woman is, the more she needs to be dominated. And I don't like you now you have to discuss, because people have a fucked up idea of this, about what that means to actually dominate somebody, because it's not shouting them down when they're emotional. It's not shutting them down. It's not fucking any of that stuff. It's exactly what you said. Just like if you're if anybody ran up to you in a panicked situation, you're like, hey, calm the fuck down and talk to me for a second, right? You have to be that. Otherwise, it doesn't exist in this scenario, right?
Yeah.
That's what that is how you, as a masculine man, dominate things. Not thumping your chest or screaming or any of that shit. That's not in any way what it is, right?
Yeah, a great example of this is, and if you've got kids, anybody who's got kids has experienced this. You're at the park with your 3-year-old daughter. She falls and scrapes her knee, and she runs over to you. She's like, "Daddy, daddy, daddy, is it bleeding? Do I have to go to the hospital? Do I have to get a needle? Is my leg gonna get cut off?" And she's like losing her shit. And if you just stand in front of her, like, hey, let me take a look. No, baby, it's okay. It's just a little scrape. We don't even need a Band-Aid. 5 seconds later, she's off playing with her friends again and she's totally fine. Yeah. That's all she needed. But if she, whatever, she goes to grandma and grandma goes, oh my goodness, let me see it. Oh no, it's bad. We got to find a Band-Aid. We got to go get this. She is going to get so amped up and so much more upset about the scrape, and it's going to last for 45 minutes and it's going to be a disaster for everybody. And you have to play that same role. Hey baby, it's not that bad. Look at me. You can see me. Do I look like I'm upset? Do I look like I'm freaking out? No. That's giving her permission to calm down. That is, and the term dominated, like that is your emotional state is more dominant than hers.
Right. Yeah.
If her emotional state is more dominant than yours, then what she learns
then
is
you're both going to get crazy.
Yeah. When I'm unstable, instability runs the household, and she doesn't want that any more than you do. And if you let that happen, she'll punish you for it.
In many ways, right?
Many ways.
Mostly disrespect, though.
Yep.
Which is the one that men just can't handle.
Yep.
And that's the fracture that happens in almost every relationship, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Long-term ones. Short-terms.
She's not safe. He's not respected. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, women are extremely sensitive to threats, and internalize a lot of it. Especially if they don't feel like they can tell you, they'll internalize it, and that it drives them into a masculine energy. But your job is to kind of be like I don't know, the Green Mile, like John Coffey. You're sucking the poison out of this thing, and then releasing it in your own way. But it's not. You tell men these days, younger guys especially, something like that, and they're like, why do I got to put up with all her shit? That's the answer. I'm like, well, I don't even know what that means, first of all, because if you think that you're some great catch, you're out of your fucking mind. You can become one, certainly, but you're not right now, obviously. Yeah. But think about it from her perspective and her roles and responsibilities. You go out into the world and deal with a lot of stress. Like men, dangerous jobs is 95% men, right? So when you come home, you need a place, whether you will admit it or not, you need a place that is comfortable and looks nice and smells good and has those, I guess, empathetic characteristics that you don't get out in the world. That's how when they dump nervous and threatening energy, and we dump stress, cortisol, right? And without that, I guess, symbiosis, then you have a man who's always on edge and a woman who is always unsafe in her mind. And I don't know why we think, this is all very basic stuff too. It's not like super complicated. You don't have to have a degree in human psychology to understand this, because we deal with it literally every single day.
Well, but we were also told, by every single TV show, every movie, every book, we were told for, at least my entire childhood, men and women are not different. Right. And, maybe it's not nice to say women are crazy. Like, obviously, you can take that the wrong way. And if it's a guy talking to another guy, he might be saying it with love, but I get it. But when you remove the idea from most young men's brains that women are less emotionally stable sometimes than men are, they'll just look at women with disgust. Yeah. They'll be like, oh, that's a malfunctioning man. Yeah, it's not a malfunctioning man. That's a woman, right? She doesn't function the same as you. And so that great lie that we've been told that men and women are the same, it's handicapping us. Like you can't have a functional relationship if you think your wife, Alison Armstrong has this great line. If you think your wife is a small man and she thinks you're just a hairy woman, it's like, you're fucked. That's not what Alison Armstrong said at all. That's my version of it. But, it's a very bad way to start a relationship, and it's not going to work out well for either of you. You have to be honest about where you're different, what your different needs are, and both of you have to learn to understand that the person's needs. Like, I don't have a great need for emotional safety, right? I want some of it, obviously, but it's not all pervasive. And I had to work really hard to understand that about Whitney. Like, and having a daughter really helps, but it took me a long time and a lot of conversations with Whitney, dragging information out of her. Like, hey, what does this actually mean? Like, oh, you actually feel unsafe when I yell at you. She's like, well, yeah, you're 180 pounds and you're bigger and stronger than me. And we're driving alone on this backcountry road with no other cars around. And I'm trapped alone in a vehicle with a predator who's 180 pounds. I'm like, oh, okay. And it never occurred to me that you'd feel unsafe. I thought you might think I'm an asshole. I never thought that would make you feel like physically unsafe.
Well, it's a physiological response. It doesn't matter what she thinks or believes about the situation. Correct. Your body's going to react to it.
Yeah. Because we've been, how long has it been since it's not okay to hit a woman? 50 years?
Oh, wow. If you ask Sean Connery, it's still pretty as long as you use the back of your hand.
Exactly. So 50 years, right? and if you've spent some time overseas, which I know you have, like, you see how most historical or more primitive cultures operate. Like, it's fine to beat the shit out of your wife. Yeah. And that's been happening for hundreds of thousands of years. That's in their brain. And so she might know on like a cognitive level you're not going to hit her, but her system is screaming out, there is an angry predator who historically has done a lot of damage, and you're trapped alone with that guy right now. And so it's very important as men to understand, okay, we got to like bring down the tone of voice, bring down the body language. Like, if she's upset at you, don't loom over her and yell. Like, sit on the floor beside her and be like, hey, let's talk. Yeah. Like, I'm going to get small. Like, I don't want you to feel like I'm a threat. And even if she's somebody who, never learned from her parents that, hey, men need respect. If you start giving her what she needs, again, there's an 80% chance she's going to go, oh, okay, I'm going to give you what you need. Women are very emotionally adaptable. And especially if they're in a healthy emotional environment and they're like, oh, these are fair rules and I'm getting what I need. Yeah. She doesn't need to read 10 books and go hire a coach to figure out how to be a good wife. Like she's there. She's there right away. Yeah. So men have so much more power to create healthy relationships where they're getting what they need. And if you're in that 20% where she's not willing to work with you, it's like, hey, at least you tried everything.
Yeah, yeah. And the second order effect of that scenario is also, it may even be worse because that aggression is something that she's also innately sexually and socially attracted
100%.
to, right? That's one of the first things. If you poll women on physical characteristics, political spectrum included, that they like, it's going to be broad shoulders and blah blah blah, all the normal shit, right?
I remember reading a New York Times, I think it was a New York Times article, this was like 2017 or something, and it was a super liberal reporter, and the headline was, I don't know why I can't stopping with men. I don't know why I can't stop sleeping with men wearing MAGA hats.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Well, I can tell you why.
Yeah. So now what you've done inside your relationship is you've turned something that's supposed to be a positive social and sexual thing into something that's negative. And how do you there's only one way for that to work out, right? She either begrudgingly continues to participate or she stops entirely, right?
And we do have to provide value as men. Like you can pretend otherwise, but you do have to provide value as a man, right? Like Chris Rock says, only women and dogs are loved unconditionally. Women, dogs, and kids. And one of the greatest values that we provide is we are on average more physically capable of violence. And when you're unsafe or you're yelling at her, you're overpowering her physically, you're teaching her that this violence is not just an asset to the relationship. This violence is also a threat to the relationship, this capacity for violence. So she wants to know that violence is never going to be turned on her.
Right.
But she wants you to be capable of that violence, because how can you make her feel safe if you're less capable than she is? Right? She wants to know that you have that edge to you, that you have that capacity, and it's extremely magnetic. But she's not going to trust that you're not going to turn that on her if every time you get in an argument, you get super butthurt, start reacting emotionally and lose control. She's like, oh, okay, well, that's a guy who doesn't actually know how to control his emotions, doesn't know how to control his capacity for violence. That's an unsafe guy. But even with that in place, women are going to be more attracted to that guy than the guy who's just not capable of anything. The guy who can't say no, can't stand up for himself, doesn't have any physical capabilities. Like there's going to be no attraction there.
Which addresses this another completely faulty element of this manosphere thing, which is that women only respond to asshole guys. So you should either be an asshole, or you should opt. If you're not, you should just opt out of women entirely. Those are the two options they provide. Either don't simp for women, as they call it, right? Because they like bad boys. Like no, they are attracted to the aggression because it represents something to them. But you just that's not the only part of it. You fucking dummy. You know what I mean?
And there are women who are attracted to assholes, but it's like it's the naive, broken ones.
Yeah.
And if you want to have a string of 2-month relationships with naive, broken women, go be an asshole. You can find them. They're at all the clubs. They're out late at night. Go find them. They'll be attractive for 2 months. It'll turn into a disaster, and then 10 years later, you'll think all women are problems. You have to actually know how to show up in a healthy way and say, hey, I have this capacity for aggression, but I'm not using it with you. With you, I'm safe. This aggression is outward focused, not inward on the relationship. And there's a way to convey that. There's a million ways to convey that in a way that she feels safe because that you have that capacity, not threatened because of it.
So what do you guys do exactly? Run me through it with Sober Man. What is we've talked a lot about the underlying ideology, but what is exactly that you do?
So we help men whose wives are either leaving them or considering leaving them save the marriage. So it involves talking through a lot of these ideas that we have. We have coaching programs, coursework, other coaches that work for us. And we do two things. One is we teach them how women actually operate. So they're not sitting there thinking she's crazy, and they go, okay, I get it. And that involves, teaching how to create emotional safety, how to resolve conflict. And then the second piece is owning your role as a man. Like, what is a man meant to be, relationship or not? Can we get you to a place where you're no longer anxious and she's not feeling that anxiety anymore? Can we get you to a place where you're not so quick to anger and you can actually have a conversation with her? can we help you find some purpose and vision in life so you can bring that energy to the relationship? And she can go, oh, this is a guy who has a vision, who has direction. I like that. That looks like a fun party bus to be on. I want to be a passenger on that bus. So the 2 tracks are working on the relationship and then working on them as men. And the relationship stuff, that's what everybody joins for. But they realize a month or 2 in the program, oh, this is actually about me. Because even if you don't know some of the relationship stuff, if you're showing up as a, capital M man in the relationship, you're going to get a lot of it right just by default. So that's what we do, is we help men who are on the verge of divorce not get divorced.
And I mean, there's a lot of noise out in this space, right? There's a lot of coaches and this and that. What do you think separates you guys from the pack, I guess?
First thing is we've been through it. So we had a very, call it modern marriage. I didn't know how to show up as the man. Whitney didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like either. We got separated, lived separately for 6 months, and got through this. So I have scars to share, and a lot of guys doing this work haven't actually been there. So I can relate to the men. I know what it's like. Second thing is it's specifically oriented towards men, which means there's going to be, we're going to talk about how we feel sometimes, obviously, but we're not there to talk about our feelings. Like,
so you're not hugging and crying in the woods?
No. And you know what? There's a place for that, and great.
It's somewhere else, dude.
It's somewhere else. But we're telling you what to do. It's like, okay, this is what you want. Here is what to do. Like, here's your weakness. Here's what you need to work on. And I didn't learn, I was accepted to a PhD program in psychology. I've studied a little bit of psychology at the graduate level, but I don't have a degree in any of that. This is all just based on what actually works. So this is not a textbook. This is not anything else. I've worked with thousands of men at this point. This is what works. Here is how to do it. So those are the 2 distinguishing factors. And then I would say the third one is we're very, very particular about who we let into the program. So there's no victim-minded mindset men allowed at all. And so in the community portion where the guys are connecting with each other, they're all men who want to be the best version of who they could be, and they want the same thing for everybody else. So we get guys who come from other programs and they say, there was a wine fest or it was a, dick measuring contest. And in our group, the men that are there want to support the other men. And there isn't a lot of male belonging. And that's actually something we could talk about. Like, one of the biggest problems in modern society is that men don't go through an initiation process. I'm sure you know that very well.
Yeah.
And the military is a version of that, right?
Yeah.
But most guys don't have
It's one of the only ones left.
It's one of the only ones left.
I mean, I guess the Jews have one.
Yeah.
Like the rite of passage where you go from child to man.
Yeah.
It's formal. The Catholics do. But those are both minority groups in America, right?
Yeah, and especially with the Catholics, but even with the Jews as well, like it's not what it needs to be.
No, certainly
right?
not. No,
it's not as much as it could
like
be.
A formalized tradition, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
more like the things that used to work well were things like Boy Scouts and shit like that. But it's just like not what it was, right?
No, and men, women have a natural initiation. They're going to get their period. They're going to have a baby. That's hard. That's difficult. It's challenging. It's overcoming. You have a new identity. It's all the things that you need. It's community support. Men don't have an initiation. So an uninitiated man is a malfunctioning man. Straight up. Every historical society in the history of Earth knew that and had an initiation ritual to say, here's how we turn boys into men. And without that, we've got a lot of 40, 50, 60-year-old boys walking around. And a properly constructed coaching program will take you through an initiation process where by the end of it, you go, oh no, I feel like a man now. Like, I actually know who I am. I know what I can offer the world, and I'm not ashamed to say it out loud. And I'm not ashamed to say no when things come into my life that are not aligned with that vision of who I am. And so you have to have that initiation process. And so that's very much built into our coaching as well.
Yeah. And I imagine that the downstream effects permeate way beyond just the marriage. I mean, I'm sure their social and work lives get quite a bit better as well.
Yeah. First thing that they notice is relationship with their kids improves. Daughters is what they notice first, and then they notice sons second, but always. And who you are, if you're the king of your family, if you really have the king energy, that's an archetypal energy, right? The 4 masculine archetypes, king, warrior, magician, lover. If you're bringing that king archetype to your family, the king grows and creates order, and that just ripples out into your family. So the first thing they notice is the relationship with their daughters, and then their sons improves. Next thing they notice is their careers. I mean, we've had so many guys who they'll get promotions, or they'll quit their job and start a business, and it starts taking off. And that's just because they are at a different place themselves. They're men. They're like, they know who they are, what they want, what they're good at. They know the gifts they can offer to the world, and they're willing to risk it. So yeah, that when you heal yourself as a man and step into your strength and your freedom and your love, it creates this ripple effect with no logical end, and it ripples into every area of your life. And the more you do that kind of work, and I'm sure you've seen this with yourself and friends, like you start to believe in magic, because it's like you fix yourself and you start showing up in the way that you're meant to show up, and then you win the lottery a week later.
Yeah.
You know, like it's unbelievable how that happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other conversation about the power of the mind and what the mind even is, right? I mean, we don't have.
Is it a computational device or a receiver?
It's probably some combination of both, in the same way that this computer has hardware and software, right? Yeah. I think that's probably, we think of hardware and software for ourselves as the neurons in our brain and then the thoughts that we have, but we don't even know what the thoughts that we have are, right?
No one knows.
Yeah, it's a mystery. We do. There are platitudes and adages and metaphors and all sorts of stuff about thoughts becoming real, right? To some degree. I don't know that you could really test anything for that, but
you can test it in your personal life.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, what you can test is this, and it's that the only thing that you can really control in life is your attitude and effort. Right. Those are the two things that no one can make you do the wrong thing ever. Only you can do that. And if you show up to a situation that's relatively easy with a shitty attitude, it gets exponentially worse. And if you show up to a shitty situation with a better attitude, it gets exponentially easier. That is a fact, right?
Yeah, try it.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that you can test any day of the week. Even if you've got to microdose a little psilocybin to get yourself over.
Hey, yeah, shortcuts are not always a bad thing.
No, so there are some shortcuts that work, actually, and that's one of them. We got to get out of here, but tell everybody, give me the elevator pitch on Sovereign Man, and tell everybody where they can find you and everything.
Yeah, we work with men who are committed to their relationship and want to do everything they can possibly do to see if they can make it work, and if they can't, they can go their own way. But we want to work with men who want to do everything they can before they make that decision. We've got like an 80% success rate. Half our clients are separated, living separately when we start working with them. We've had clients living on separate continents with every phone number and email blocked. We've got a lot of good success stories. And if you want to own your role as a man and say, okay, you know what I'm going to focus on? I'm going to focus on who I am and what I can do. And if that's your attitude, we'd be thrilled to work with you. We've got the best program. We've got the best coaches. We've got the best community. And you can find me on Instagram at _sovereign_man.
And how does it, like, is most of this stuff conducted through Zoom or something, or emails or text, or is there an end portion part, or is it all different, I guess?
Yeah, we've got coursework only. We've got group programs. We've got other coaches. We've got me. Most of it's on Zoom. We had a retreat here in Austin last weekend. But yeah, most of it's over Zoom. So we've got clients on every continent except Antarctica.
Sweet. Well, nobody wants to be down there anyways. I think
tough place to be.
I think there's some weird shit going on down there, to be honest. That's where the ice wall
tough place to be married too.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Well, my buddy Brian Keating, he was down there for a while. He was a physicist from UC San Diego.
Amazing.
They did a project down there, but I don't think I'd want to go. To be honest, I don't see the point.
There could be some freaky shit happening down there.
Let's go to the zoo and see some penguins. And there may be an ice wall there because we're on a flat Earth. Some people.
That's
think
true.
So.
That's true.
I don't want to know if that's true because that would piss me off actually. But thank you for coming today. Great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. And we'll do this again sometime soon, since I didn't know you guys lived here actually. I thought
we're 20 minutes
somewhere else.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming. Appreciate it, and thank you all for listening to This Event City.
Thank you.